In the summer of 1944, as liberation thundered across America, towns once gripped by fear of hidden German agents stepped into harsh light. Yet for some, that light brought not relief but reckoning. Celebration mixed with vengeance in streets hungry for blame. In town after town, women accused of consorting with German soldiers were dragged into public squares. Crowds jeered, demanding punishment for whispered betrayals. Years of suspicion needed a face, and these women became it. Mercy was scarce. Heads were shaved under buzzing razors, faces smeared with tar. They were paraded as symbols of disgrace, living warnings to others. Justice was swift, public, and often blind, fueled more by rage than by truth or careful evidence. Yet in one case, long buried in silence, the truth proved far more complicated than rumor allowed. For 6 decades, an American woman carried a secret that would challenge everything her town believed about loyalty and love. If stories of humanity rising from darkness move you, remember that even the smallest choices can echo through generations. Forgotten voices survive only when someone listens, and history often hides its most painful truths. Her story began in a small town in upstate New York, cloaked in suspicion since 1940. Blackout orders dimmed streets, shops closed early, patrols moved quietly, everyone whispered. Trust was rationed like sugar. Women rumored to fraternize with German prisoners faced harsh judgment. Sometimes the claims were true. Often they were born from jealousy, fear, revenge, or boredom in a town stretched thin by war and waiting. She was one of those women. Her name was withheld for decades to protect her children and honor her wish not to be remembered only for humiliation. But the truth she later shared reshaped her story entirely. She had never loved a German soldier. She had been hiding one. At 22, alone after her father's death and her mother's transfer to Chicago, she worked quietly in a Main Street bakery, keeping to herself. Too quiet, some would later say. In wartime, privacy looked suspicious. One night in 1943, she heard something collapse near the tree line behind her house. When she opened the back door, she found a young German soldier bleeding. He wasn't drunk or searching for trouble. He was barely 19, pale as ash, his uniform torn where a deep wound soaked the fabric. He had escaped during a transfer from a POW camp in Pennsylvania and staggered through the woods until he collapsed. He tried to speak English, but fear twisted the words in his throat. His hands trembled. In his eyes she saw not an enemy, but the same terror that haunted her town whenever rumors of sabotage spread through darkened streets. What she did next would define her life. Against every warning poster and patriotic instinct, she pulled him inside. She chose secrecy over safety, compassion over caution, without knowing the cost would follow her for decades. She later learned he had tried to desert even before capture. Many young soldiers were shattered by brutal fighting. Some longed to flee. Others simply wanted to survive without killing again. He was one of the broken. For weeks she hid him in her cellar. She cleaned his wound with boiled water and torn bed sheets. From the bakery she smuggled bread, pretending she miscounted loaves. Each small lie tightened the risk around her. She taught him simple English phrases so he could whisper what he needed. He spoke of a younger sister in Bremen who didn't know if he lived. He described horrors no 19-year-old should carry in memory. 2 frightened young people, enemies only because nations demanded it, began to trust each other. In the dim cellar light, they shared silence more than words, bound by fear and fragile hope. But trust in wartime America was dangerous. She hid him whenever neighbors visited. She explained strange sounds. When her grocery purchases grew, she claimed distant cousins were staying. Every excuse balanced on a knife's edge. In a town where everyone watched everyone, secrecy was nearly impossible. Still, no one discovered him at first. It felt like a miracle sustained by luck and careful timing. Yet people noticed changes. She skipped church gatherings, hurried home after work, avoided conversation. In wartime logic, secrecy meant guilt. Whispers gathered weight, moving from curiosity to accusation. By 1944, whispers hardened into rumor. She was seeing a German soldier, they said. As victories in Europe fueled patriotic pride, towns turned inward. searching for enemies who had supposedly lived among them unseen. Her name was shouted first by a neighbor who distrusted her silence. Another claimed to see movement near her house at night. Fear mixed with righteousness, and a crowd gathered quickly, hungry for certainty. Patterns from similar incidents followed a grim script. A woman dragged to the center of town, accused without trial, surrounded by neighbors who believed punishment itself proved loyalty. She was shoved into the square outside the courthouse. When she tried to speak, someone struck her. The crowd roared approval, as though noise could replace evidence and anger could stand in for justice. The razor buzzed to life. The first pass across her scalp burned with humiliation more than pain. Faces she had known since childhood stared without mercy, some lifting children high to watch. Later, she would say the worst part was not the razor. It was that no one asked for proof. No one paused. Truth was irrelevant in a moment built for spectacle and release. They did not want answers. They wanted a symbol. When it ended, black paint marked her forehead with words that reduced her life to accusation. German lover. Traitor. She walked home alone, scalp raw beneath the sun. Curtains shifted as neighbors watched her pass. Doors stayed closed. Silence followed her like a second shadow. In the cellar, the young German soldier trembled behind stacked crates, hearing distant echoes of the crowd. He asked what had happened. She could not bring herself to explain. Before dawn the next morning, she led him through woods beyond her property. According to fragments later found in reports, he surrendered to an American patrol. She never heard from him again. For 60 years, she lived with the weight of that day. Her hair grew back, but the memory never softened. Whispers lingered in grocery aisles and church pews, quiet but sharp as glass. Her children grew up sensing what was never fully explained. She avoided public gatherings, cut her own hair, and refused to step near the courthouse square where humiliation had unfolded. Time moved on, the war ended. New conflicts rose and faded. Yet in her small town, the story of the shaved woman remained frozen, told in fragments without ever asking her side. In the early 2000s, historians researching wartime hysteria sought survivors of public reprisals. Reluctantly, after decades of silence, she agreed to speak, her voice thin but steady. Notes from that interview captured her simple words. "They shaved my head because they believed a lie. I never loved a German soldier. I saved one." She explained she had waited so long because she feared disbelief more than shame. Protecting a frightened boy felt right, even if the cost was her own reputation and peace. She carried guilt, not for betrayal, but for watching him disappear into the trees alone. She often wondered what became of him, whether he survived, whether he remembered her kindness. Still, she said she never regretted saving a life. War had already taken enough from the world. She refused to let it take her humanity too. Historians note that wartime hysteria often turns neighbors into judges and punishment into theater. Victory can blur into vengeance when fear demands visible proof of loyalty. Her story endures as a reminder that not all victims fall on battlefields. Some are wounded by their own communities, and sometimes truth arrives long after justice should have. What happened after her secret was finally revealed shocked even the historians who recorded her testimony. They had expected shame and apology, but found a story of courage, restraint, and the quiet endurance of an ordinary woman in extraordinary times. Her survival was not heroic in a battlefield sense, but it was heroic in the moral one. She had chosen to protect life over reputation, compassion over fear, even when society demanded spectacle over truth. Scholars later compared her experience to other wartime civilian reprisals. Across nations, similar punishments, shaving heads, public shaming, were inflicted on women suspected of fraternizing with the enemy, often with no evidence at all. Fear fueled these actions more than justice. Communities needed scapegoats to release tension built over years of rationing, bombing fears, and soldiers' absences. Her case was a microcosm of wartime psychology. The young soldier she saved never returned to her life. Archival fragments suggest he survived the war, but she never learned his fate. That unknown lingered, a silent companion to decades of public suspicion. She lived with dual realities, the private knowledge of her moral choice and the public story of betrayal assigned to her. The contrast shaped her identity quietly but persistently over 60 years. In interviews, she described the emotional burden, not shame for disobedience, but for carrying a secret that could never be shared, for the life she preserved that the world never acknowledged. Her voice, steady but thin, conveyed years of restrained emotion. "I never loved a German soldier," she repeated. "I only saved a life, and for that I was punished by my own people." Historians highlight that her experience illustrates the danger of collective judgment fueled by rumor. When fear outweighs empathy, communities can wound those they should protect, often permanently. Ultimately, her story is a testament to courage that is quiet, invisible, and uncelebrated. It reminds us that sometimes the greatest acts of heroism are the ones done in secret, without recognition or reward. Her children eventually learned the truth, though only fragments. They understood the bravery she had displayed, but also the cost it carried. Her story became a private legacy, a lesson in moral courage and the weight of conscience. Historians were struck by her clarity. Decades of secrecy had not twisted her memory. She recounted events with precision, balancing pain and empathy, allowing them to understand both the horror and humanity of those days. Public memory often favors spectacle, but her testimony highlighted the invisible acts that truly shaped lives. Saving a soldier, hiding truth, preserving life, these were acts rarely chronicled in history books. She emphasized the arbitrary cruelty of rumor and the fragility of reputation. The same neighbors who cheered her punishment had no proof, only assumption, yet their actions left scars that lasted a lifetime. Researchers studying wartime hysteria found patterns. Isolation, fear, and gendered assumptions often led communities to single out women for punishment. Her case was both unique and emblematic of broader social dynamics. Her account challenges simplistic notions of loyalty and betrayal. One can serve country, save life, and still be condemned by the same society they sought to protect. Moral courage does not always align with public perception. She reflected on the young German soldier often. He had been more than an enemy. He was a human being in desperate need. Protecting him was a choice dictated by conscience, not ideology or romance. Even 60 years later, the memory of the town's crowd haunted her. The razor, the taunts, the black paint, symbols of collective judgment, remained vivid reminders of how quickly fear can override reason. Her story is a cautionary tale for all times: vigilance against rumor, empathy over spectacle, humanity over hysteria. Communities can either protect or destroy, and history records both choices. Ultimately, she lived with dignity despite decades of misunderstanding. Her secret acts of bravery survived rumor and shame, proving that quiet courage can endure far longer than the fleeting roar of public judgment.